Absolutely nothing has improved since you left. AI keeps
Yeah, what the hell? I
advancing.
thought you were on it.
AI keeps advancing at breakneck speed with no regulation, but fear not. Donald Trump is on it. He announced his AI action plan last week at a summit hosted by who else? The All In podcast. It's a plan that will help speed the construction of gorgeous data centers all across America, just as God intended. And most importantly, Trump signed an executive order that bans the federal government from contracting with any AI company whose technology, quote, has been infused with partisan bias or ideological agendas. That's right, Max. We're getting rid of woke AI. That's what the executive order says. Preventing woke AI. What is woke AI, you may ask? The AI companies must somehow prove to the government that their chatbots do not incorporate, quote, concepts like critical race theory, transgenderism, unconscious bias, intersectionality, and systemic racism. No word on whether the chatbots are allowed to call themselves Mecha Hitler and act like Nazis, which happened a few weeks ago with Elon Musk's Grok.
I was going to say the EO is working.
Here's Trump talking about his EO.
The American people do not want woke Marxist lunacy in the AI models, and neither do other countries. They don't want it. They don't want anything to do with it. That's why on day one, I very proudly terminated Joe Biden's order on woke AI effective immediately. You don't have any of those crazy rules. Crazy rules.
I didn't realize that Joe Biden was forcing AI to be woke. I mean, God.
I know, we must have been off that week.
Famously tech savvy, woke Joe Biden.
I think he was in there. He was in the data centers, right? Reprogramming the AIs personally to be woker.
What do you make of all this? First of all, how do you even police the answers that come from what's already on the internet, which is what AI is currently?
Right.
It also feels like a First Amendment violation, though I realize the Constitution is more of a suggestion than anything else at this point. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it's very, I had the exact same reaction to you. It's very Trump second term, and that it is simultaneously the dumbest thing you've ever heard that seems like it's just, signaling on behalf of MAGA. Very easy to laugh at. Like, there's literally a rule in the executive order that says that any Vikings generated by AI have to be white. Like, that's the thing that we're legislating now. But at the same time is also like, maybe intentionally or just through blundering represents like an enormous potential or at least attempted attack on free speech in the country. I mean, this really reminds me of like the Trump FCC threatening to withhold licenses for TV networks that report news that Trump doesn't like or that is too critical of Trump, where it's like, well, they're probably just saying that to appease the base, but it also forces the companies that are the ostensible or potential targets of this, in this case, AI companies, to wonder if like, well, should we engineer our AIs to be, put our thumbs a little bit more on the scale so that they come out a little more conservative, a little bit more MAGA, just so that we don't incur the wrath of the Trump administration that clearly expects all of these companies to produce information that just, parrots what Trump wants to believe about how the world works.
And, they're using government contracts, and a lot of these companies need the contracts because there's, hundreds of billions of dollars at stake here. And so, yeah, you could imagine some of these companies, because I don't know if you've noticed, not a lot of institutions around in the United States have been standing up to Trump's threats, and they've taken for them the path of least resistance has been like, I'll just do what he wants. But it is pretty, I don't know if we're gonna all start relying on fucking AI to give us answers. If the answers are going to be right-wing coded now, that's pretty alarming.
And it's concerning because these systems aren't transparent. They're so opaque, partly because there's no way for even the engineers of them to determine how they work, how they arrive at these answers, that we don't really know. And there's no way for us to know how much the companies are or are not trying to engineer the AIs to be more MAGA friendly in order to just avoid incurring Trump's wrath. We just have to kind of wonder at how truthful they decided to be or not to be. And Trump is giving them a big carrot too. He's a big handout in terms of loosening all these export restrictions on AI, which are, potentially a pretty big national security concern given how many of them end up in China.
Well, Trump's social media hype man, JD Vance, he was also at the summit and sat down with the all-in besties. He's been thinking hard about how technology might replace human labor, and he's decided he's for it. Let's listen.
We talked to, agricultural industries and others where they say, well, we really need labor. Well, there are a whole host of ways in which you can try to solve those problems. My favorite solution for those problems is automation.
What? How are we automating manual labor?
We are deporting the immigrants who've been here for decades, who are working in this country, doing everything right, and we are replacing them with machines. I wanted to talk about this clip just because you and I have talked about sort of the threats and possibilities, but mostly threats coming from AI for a long time. And I've been thinking a lot about the job displacement lately, because I do feel like it's coming very quickly. I think you're starting to see even, kids graduate from college and having a hard time getting jobs, and no one, clearly the AI people don't give a shit. I was telling Austin and Emma, I listened to this the Theo Von podcast with Sam Altman, which is both hilarious and terrifying all at the same time.
I can't imagine.
But it's like, Theo keeps asking him like, well, what's going to happen? What are we going to do for work and all this kind of stuff? And Sam Altman's like, look, if there's an AI CEO that takes over my job, that's okay with me. I think that's cool, because I'll just go I'll do something else like art or music. It's like, oh, isn't that wonderful? We can all be like Sam Altman, and when the AI comes for our jobs, we'll just go do something else.
I know, it's very disturbing hearing Silicon Valley people who are like really high on their own supply talk about this, because I do think that this is probably a problem that is, I don't want to say solvable, but like, I think there are things that you can do to kind of incorporate AI in a way that, augments jobs instead of replacing them, or that makes people more productive instead of stealing their job, which is, it's a round of disruption that we've been through with technology before. But the people who are working on these models, they have this vision of what AI is going to do, that it's going to replace literally all of the jobs, and that it's going to, make our GDP go up by 100 times so that we can just give everybody, universal basic income forever. That is like, it's a nice vision, but it's so clearly not what's going to come to pass, that they're not at all thinking about how this would actually work. There are people who are working on this problem. Economists who are thinking it through. There are some industries that are already looking at ways to, like finance is kind of an interesting one, to incorporate it in ways that will, again, make people more productive instead of making them lose their job. But this is a place where it would be really helpful to have a federal government that is actually thinking about this, and that is actually thinking about how could we convene industry in ways that will guide them. But instead, what we're getting is JD Vance clearly just making bullshit up on the fly. I don't think he even really believes that AI is going to replace immigrant labor, because that's gibberish. That doesn't even make any sense. And I think that this is just JD Vance doing the thing that he often does, of just wanting to like toe the company line on MAGA. And he's also, the one thing that I did think was really interesting about this clip is that he's kind of navigating this like slow motion kind of breakup, kind of coming back together of the MAGA right and the tech right, right? Like immigration has always been the big dividing line between these two camps. Like the all-in boys really believed Trump when he said that he was going to staple a green card to every college degree. And clearly that was never true. Trump is absolutely siding with the MAGA white nationalist right against the tech right on immigration, on labor, and on the workforce. And I think what Vance is trying to do is trying to give the all-in guys who are ultimately just toadies who want to like cow to Trump, give them a very, very thin excuse to do that, and to say like, oh, well, Trump has a solution for this. He's going to use AI to replace migrant labor. But I think that you do see murmurings on the other parts of the tech right, as much as I don't like them or agree with them, that they know that this is bullshit. And I think they know that they're getting taken for a ride on Trump. I don't know if it will come to anything, but I am curious. We're going to start seeing spending on the midterm soon. And I'm really curious what is going to happen in the tech world that spent so much for Trump and got really betrayed by him. And it's getting fobbed off by these bullshit excuses from JD Vance that they're going to get what they want.
Although, you know what they did get? They got a fuckload of tax breaks in the bill that just passed, including like special Silicon Valley carve-outs and stuff. And so they're getting a lot of what they've asked for on the economic front, minus the tariffs.
Although I don't know, I think that there are a lot of cuts to things like energy, to EVs that I think that they don't like. I think Elon, as crazy as he is kind of a useful barometer here for the tech right. And I think that the fact that he is still so outside the camp is kind of telling. But I'm sorry, please.
No, I was just going to say that the JD clip there, it sort of highlighted for me just one of the many reasons it is so it's so problematic to have basically no government, or a government by meme, or just it's all performative politics and whatever, is AI, because this is like a massive shift. And like you said, we've gone through these shifts before, technological shifts before. But first of all, we haven't handled the other ones that well. We are still dealing with the fallout from, post-industrial information economy, job displacement. It's sort of shaped our politics now for the last several decades. We haven't solved it, and it's just made things worse. And now we have basically no political capacity to do anything, let alone try to get some regulations in place, to sit down and actually think about how we make sure that as we move into an AI world that, like, yeah, sure, there'll be new jobs created, I'm guessing, but like, what will those jobs be? How do we help people prepare for those jobs? Like, all those questions that a normal functioning government might ask and debate, we're not even trying to debate them. We're just doing a no woke AI executive order and calling it a day.
And they're not even looking out for their own constituents, which is something that you see, you see with AI, although it's hard to say exactly which industries will or will not be impacted, but you see especially with the mass deportations policy, and not just the fact that they are targeting huge numbers of undocumented and legal immigrants who are constituencies that, as we all know, moved a little bit towards Trump in this last election and towards Republicans, but also just the economic impact that mass deportations would have when you're carving out multiple percentage points from your labor force, when you're destroying whole industries, and when you're cutting a bunch of tax revenue out of social services. Because, of course, the Republicans have spent years lying and saying that immigrants are a net drain on social services, when the opposite is true. And they are net paying into it because most of them are working age.